Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is John Swinney has actually admitted something that the SNP cult are denying, and that is an absolute doing at the polls. Okay? Now, this article is taken from the Press Association Scotland political editor Catherine Bussey, and it just came out about an hour ago. Now, this is totally ironic because literally minutes before I sat down to do a video, I was on Twitter, and there's some of the SNP cult Twitterati claiming that we've to ignore the polls because the polls are all run by Tories, right? And that's the polls that are actually battering the Tories. But you have to believe from the cult that we've not to believe them because they're all Tories, right? And SNP are going to win hundreds of seats in the Westminster election in 5 weeks' time. But John Swinney disagrees with you, right? But don't let that stop a good Twitter argument. So this piece headline is SNP has ground to cover to catch up with Labour in the polls, John Swinney says. SNP leader John Swinney has conceded his party has lots of ground to cover to catch up with rivals Labour in the polls ahead of the general election. Mr Swinney, who took over as SNP leader from Humza Yousaf just 3 weeks ago, said the party was already united behind him. Was it? And was very focused on the election campaign. Oh dear. John, let me just put something out there, right? Humza Yousaf didn't have a united party. If Humza Yousaf had a united party, Humza Yousaf would still have been the leader, no you, okay? So stop talking nonsense. We're not falling for it. However, polls have shown that the party, which for years has been the dominant force in Scottish politics, is now trailing behind Labour in the run-up to the July 4 voting day. Most recently, a poll by More in Common put support for Labour on 35%, 5 points ahead of the SNP. Mr Swinney insisted that the SNP was focused on the election as a united party. You're saying it again, John, we're still not believing you. Adding this was a significant achievement, which had come about in a very short space of time since he took charge. Now, here's one of the biggest contradictions you will ever see that quickly in your life. What he said was, when Humza had the party, we were all united behind him. He's now saying in his next breath, he's focusing on the election as a united party, which is a significant achievement, which has come about in a very short space of time since he took charge. So he's now claiming they've only been united in the last 3 weeks. What is it, John? Just stop talking. You would probably be better. Speaking to journalists as he campaigned in Dumfries, Mr Swinney said, I want to make sure we take our message to every part of the country to reclaim the ground the opinion polls indicate we have got to reclaim to be successful. There he is, admitting that the polls are right, despite the lunatics on Twitter, the proper cult members, telling you have to ignore them because they're wrong. Here's Mr Swinney telling you they are right, and we've got some work to do to make that better. The election is the best part of 6 weeks away, and we have got a lot of ground to cover to do that. Asked if that meant SNP was now fighting this election as the underdog, the Scottish First Minister said, that's an interesting way to put it. Actually, it's quite a good way to fight an election campaign. If I think back to the contest of 2017 in my own local area, Perth and North Perthshire, Mr Swinney... Oh, sorry, I pushed up too much. Mr Swinney said that generation had been thought the SNP could lose that seat, but he noted we fought as the underdog and we won. So I think there's maybe something in that. Yeah, you are the underdog, because it's more likely that Labour are going to win. You are now admitting that as well. Please, SNP, Twitterati cult people, go and read what your leader's telling you, because you're trying to sing a different song. The SNP leader was campaigning in the Dumfries and Galloway seat currently held by Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack. Mr Swinney said the Tory Cabinet Secretary, along with other Scottish Conservative MPs, had presided over austerity, Brexit and the cost of living crisis being inflicted on Scotland, adding that the voters were angry about this. Not at all. The voters understand that austerity and cost of living is not unique to the UK, and certainly not unique to the Scottish part of the United Kingdom. The cost of living crisis is worldwide. I was in Florida last year, and simple things like petrol, gas as they call it over there, had jumped up significantly since my visit before that, which was 2019, pre-COVID. It's still cheap compared to what we pay, but what they were used to paying for generations, it came up considerably. And any Americans I spoke to were quite unhappy about it. I've also been to Canary Islands and Spain and Portugal recently. Spoke to locals there, and guess what? Cost of living has went up in all these places. But don't let SNP stop us for blaming Westminster when the cost of living hits these shores. Obviously, it's their fault. He told people living in those seats held by Tories in Scotland, if you want to do something about it, then vote SNP, because we are the challenger to the Conservatives in these constituencies, and we can remove these Conservative MPs with SNP votes. My message to voters in this part of the country and in other areas where the Conservatives represent the area to vote SNP to remove the Tories. Okay, is that what we have to do? So there we go, Mr. SNP leader, First Minister. Despite many of your cult taking to social media to tell us to ignore the polls, you are accepting them and understand that A, you're the underdog, and B, you've got an uphill run to do to get your party anywhere near the votes I had before. But the most surprising thing, and I hope and I beg that somebody in the mainstream media is watching this right now, because the biggest question that John Swinney has to answer, he's never been asked. And we're now coming up for a week since the announcement of the election. We're probably 5 days in at this point, aren't we? 6 days. Nobody in the media has asked him, where is he with this de facto referendum that the SNP promised nationalists for the last 2 or 3 years? Nicola Sturgeon had went to the public and told them that the next Westminster election would be a de facto referendum, and if the Scottish voters voted for 50% plus for nationalist parties, that would give them the mandate to hold another referendum. The next her successor, Humza Yousaf, he changed the rules because he realised that probably wasn't going to happen, and he said that it should be 50% of the seats at Westminster would give them a mandate to call another referendum, which was cheating a bit, because even if you decide in your wee head that if I've got half the seats, we've got a mandate, well, you would probably do that without getting anywhere near half the votes. So why would anybody agree to your terms? No, the terms you've agreed with anybody else, the terms that you've decided we're going to run with. So now we're on to the third leader since the Scottish public and its nationalists were promised that the next Westminster election would be a de facto referendum. And nobody is bothered asking the current First Minister and leader of the SNP what his view is on the de facto referendum. The whole world's just forgot that that's what the SNP told us for the last probably 3 years we would be doing at the next Westminster election. And the only two leaders I've had since then have gave us two different versions of what victory in its de facto referendum, this is one that they make the rules up for, would be. The current leader, who's taken us into that general election, has remained silent. And I cannot for the life of me figure out why not a single mainstream media person, whether it's newspaper journalist, TV journalist, or radio show presenter, because he's been doing the rounds with all of you, nobody's asked him what his opinion is. Do us a favour, go and ask him. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing. And if you're not John Swinney, and you're not any of the SNP cabal, and you're not any of the often dwindling numbers in their cult, everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.